Hi, this is Lee Furseth from the Headwaters Science Center in Bemidji, Minnesota, and we do have some live guests and visitors here today. Yeah, they're all the way from East Grand Forks. They are on their way back home, having been in Duluth. So get that. Yeah, you could take out a map and see how that all works. Duluth is on the very east of Minnesota. Now you go across the entire state, you get to East Grand Forks, you stay on the exact same highway the whole way. Yeah, go look at a map, see how it works. Anyway, I'm reading to Orion today. And Orion gets read to every single Wednesday. So if you ever want to tune in, 3:30, get the live show. It's every Wednesday, 3:30. But also you could just go and look for the archived ones. Reading to Orion happens every single Wednesday at 3:30. Today's book, well, I'll tell you about it in just a bit. I just want to say thanks to Beltrami County Electric Cooperative. They underwrote today's show. In other words, they sent us some financial assistance to help cover the cost of the show. And we're open 7 days a week. That's a wonderful thing to get to say. We're open 7 days a week. Back in just a few months ago, we'd have to say, oh, we're closed that day, but we're open this day. Now we're just open 7 days a week. 9:30 to 5 o'clock, Monday through... You see how impatient he is? He was like, wait a minute, you're not even talking about me. That's what he was saying. You're not even talking about me. I'll get back to you in just a bit. 9:30 to 5 o'clock, Monday through Saturday. Sundays right after lunch until 5 o'clock. This is Orion. Orion is the star of the show. He's been living here since, well, all the time I've been here and a few years beyond that, maybe 6 years Orion's been living here. And he's kind of in today's story. Not entirely, because the name of the story is Worms for Breakfast. Worms for Breakfast, now, as I've told you in other shows, if you go to a library, immediately you're going to decide, are the books real? Facts, all those kinds of things, or are the books made up? That's how a library works. There's a whole bunch of books, they're nothing but real things, facts, and then there's the other side of the library where you'll find all the made-up stories. Some are so made up, they're fantasy, there's no way they could happen. Today's story is from the real section. It's called nonfiction, and like lots of nonfiction stories, this one starts with a table of contents, because that's how nonfiction books work. They kind of want to tell you, what is the story going to be about? They call there's a menu. It shows you all the page numbers and what all the chapter titles are. Now, if I were to read you every single word in this particular book, this would be about an hour and a half long show. It's a long book. Guarantee you, I'm not reading that long. About 20 minutes is the length of this show. And it's all about, so zoos do what to prepare food for their animals. What do zoos do? Why am I reading about a zoo? Well, the Science Center, Orion could attest to this, the Science Center is a little bit like a zoo because we have live animals here. So we feed snakes and reptiles, we feed our fish, we feed Orion, we have guinea pigs, and I'm sure there's a long list of other animals that I didn't list there, and we prepare their food and we take care of them. And that's what this book is all about. So I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs off of each page so you can get kind of an idea. And if you wanted to go to your own library and get this book, it's called Worms for Breakfast. Remember, you're going to go to the non-fiction side of the library. So here it is. Hungry, hungry hippos and more. Some animals like lions only eat meat. Those are Orion's least favorite animals, the ones that eat meat, because he doesn't eat meat. And he could be prey of an animal that eats meat. These animals are called, do you know? Animals that only eat meat, do you know what they're called? No? Okay. Comes from a Spanish word, carne.
Comes from a Latin word.
It's called carnivores. Meat eaters are called carnivores. And others only eat plants. Plants eaters are called, you know that one? This one's herbivores. They only eat plants. They're called herbivores. Now it's going to name a bunch of other ones. Ones I've never even thought about. There are insectivores. Insectivores? What do they eat, do you think? Insectivores. Yeah, that's right. Insects. And then there's frugivores. Frugivores. That must only be fruit. And then there are omnivores. We fit in that category. Any idea what omnivores eat? Yeah, everything. Omnivores eat everything.
That's great.
When's the last insect they ate?
Probably more recently than you would like to know about.
Yeah, probably. Could have been yesterday during my bike ride. Maybe there's some I ate, only wasn't intentional. That means we eat, well, anything and everything. Bears, skunks, raccoons, they're all omnivores. How do zookeepers keep up with all of these different diets? Well, to begin with, that's where I'm going to stop on this page. But there are some recipes, and just in case you want to make food that you could feed to animals, I'm going on to the next page. A kitchen. So, does the Science Center have a kitchen? Yes, we have a kitchen. It's downstairs. There's a refrigerator. There's a big counter for preparing the food. And like a zoo, so we could say, the Headwaters Science Center, animals eat a lot. So, at the Brandywine Zoo in Willington, Delaware, the weekly grocery list includes the following. Here it comes. 280 pounds of meat, 4 pounds of fish, 60 eggs, 500 crickets, 1,000 mealworms, 35 rats, and 50 mice. Join some chefs in a typical zoo kitchen to see what ingredients are used and how they're prepared. So if you wanted to know, do we feed any of the things on that list at this place? The answer is yes. Did you hear any?
Insects.
Yep. Yep.
Crickets, meat.
We feed crickets. Mice, you're right. And they listed off rats, and we have rats here as well. And then we feed some, help me out here, Ryan, not pigeons.
Quail.
Quail, that's right, we feed some quail. Our owl,
The birds.
our
eat
raptors
quail.
eat quail. They come to us dead as well. Babying the kids. Cuter than cute, animals are being born all the time in zoos. The best way to feed animal babies is the natural way. For mammals, that means letting mama do it. Most of the mammal babies born in a zoo are nursed by their own mother. That way they get the perfect food in just the right quantity at just the right time. Nursing mothers need extra care themselves if their babies are going to grow up to be big and strong. And there's a whole menu for what do you feed a flamingo. When was the last time we had a baby here?
Got the painted turtle right now.
Our painted turtle?
Yeah. It wasn't born here, but it's a baby.
Oh yeah.
I mean, as far as you're talking about stuff that's born here, we probably have cockroaches and walking sticks that are born
that's
here
right.
almost every day.
Have you seen our cockroaches? After the show.
But as far as a vertebrate that's been born here, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I guess depending on your definition of born, the trout that we had, they came to us as eggs and hatched here.
Yep.
So whether you're counting born as when the egg came out of the mother or when the egg hatches.
A recipe for conservation. Zoo animals are endangered or very rare. That would be some of them. And that's a special purpose that zoos serve. So there are some animals that are so rare that the only place they actually live is in the zoo. Zookeepers offer the babies of endangered animals extra care to give the species the best chance of survival. At the Adelaide Zoo in Australia, I knew I was going to pause there. Ryan, have you ever been to that zoo?
I have not.
Yeah. But you were in that part of the country at some point in your life, yes?
Yeah, I lived in New Zealand. I didn't really get over to Australia at all, but I interacted with folks from a lot of these zoos because I did work at a zoo in New Zealand that's a part of the same governing body as all the ones in Australia. They just have one big governing body over there. So I've been in meetings with people probably from the Adelaide Zoo, but not been there.
Yeah. Anyway, this one. At the Adelaide Zoo in Australia, a rare palm cockatoo egg was removed from its parents' nest. The two birds had never been able to successfully raise hatchlings before, so the zookeepers placed the egg in an incubator. That's a machine that keeps eggs warm until it hatches. Snail trail mix.
We do incubation here. Have we had the chickens at any point since you've been here?
Not in my 2 years.
Yeah.
COVID kind of put the stop for both of those years.
And but come in the summers, and sometimes we'll have a bunch of baby chicks here, and we get them as eggs, and we incubate them until they hatch. Although that was, I believe that continues, because that was...
Well, we'll see. Midnight snack is kind of interesting. Yes, I've read this book already. Orion, I want you to think about this. And while you're thinking about this, you could think about the owl. In the wild, nocturnal animals wake up at sunset with growling tummies. Growling tummies. How do keepers feed animals that sleep all day? At the Berlin Zoo in Germany, they beat the clock with a trick of the light. In the morning, they dim the lights in nocturnal animal exhibits to simulate moonlight. This makes nocturnal animals think it's nighttime. And then at night, while the whole rest of the zoo grows dark, these cages are well lit, letting both zookeepers and nocturnal animals rest easy. The animals wake up at sunset, ready to have their breakfast at the same time as the zookeepers' early risers. So they fool the animals with their lights.
That's a big thing you need to do if you're housing multiple different species in the same enclosure. Because if you just throw food out there, the ones that are awake are the ones that are going to eat it. So the way we get around this, because we have some animals that like to eat nocturnally as well, like we have ball python, for example, almost always takes her food overnight. But she's the only animal that's in that tank, so she doesn't have to worry about somebody else eating it in the meanwhile. So we just drop it in there at the normal time, we feed everybody else, and she just takes it overnight. But I have been in places that have done this too. We had a exhibit on kiwis at the Wellington Zoo that was that. It was dark in there during the day, and the lights would kick on at night.
The thrill of the hunt. Another really interesting chapter. In the wild, animals don't find bowls of cereal ready and waiting each morning. Predators like lions and tigers must chase and capture their food before chowing down. Without the thrill of the hunt, zoo animals might get bored or lazy. They might overeat. They might lose their appetite entirely. Zookeepers work hard to keep this from happening. They change predators' feeding routines often so the animals never know what to expect. And they make the meals that require some effort for the animal to find the food. So that's a way to get the animal to still do some exercise, plus create just enough interest so the animal will go ahead and eat the food that's being prepared for them.
Enrichment would be the term that's come up in a few of these talks. That is kind of what they're talking about there. Not just giving them a dish, giving them something to interact with in the process of getting the food.
Brain food. Foraging animals like chimpanzees and elephants also need to search for their supper in the wild. The search exercises their bodies and their minds. Foragers might have to figure out how to reach an underground nest or crack a hard-to-open shell. Remember where to find their favorite foods. This also delivers brain power. Exactly what you were talking about, right?
Yep. So we don't have too many animals around here that we have to worry about with that. It's basically the parrot is the most important one. Although you see us do it with the guinea pigs and the rabbit too. Sometimes they'll go in there and see we have some hay or some veggies that are stuffed in like a toilet paper tube. That's what that is.
All right. Picky, pickier, and pickiest. Pandas only eat bamboo. Koalas stick to leaves from a eucalyptus tree. How do zoos cater to these choosiest of chewers? At the Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary in Australia, 2 leafcutters on staff collect 1,100 pounds of eucalyptus branches from their plantations every day. The branches are brought back to the zoo in supersized wheeled bins. On site, the leafy branches are put into pots, which they fill with water to keep them fresh and juicy. The keepers then attach the pots to the animals' perching poles. That way, koalas can munch all day long without coming down. Talk about potluck. Okay, I don't really love that joke, but hey, they put it in there, so there you are.
We would, the giraffes at the zoo I worked at had a very similar setup. Because you can't just have them in there with however many trees, because they'll clear those trees out immediately. So you end up having kind of fake trees in there that you put foliage on yourself and have them clear it out. So you have to,
almost like a flagpole.
Yeah,
run it
basically.
up the flagpole. Yeah. Seafood special. All right, and we have a little bit of this going on at the Science Center too. At the Birch Aquarium in La Jolla, California. La Jolla, California. The marine menu changes with the tides. The aquarium's seafood arrives frozen and is stored in a giant walk-in freezer. Each night, staff members transfer about 25 pounds of it to the fish food refrigerator to thaw. Then the next morning, they simply chop the food with a knife. Then, the prepped food goes into plastic containers and is taken to the tanks. Now, if you thought about that, that sounded a little bit like we do for snakes, right? And Brian, you're going to talk about this in a whole nother show, what kind of food prep we actually do. But yes, our food does come to us sometimes as frozen food. This might be the best time, though, to give a pause and give a shout out to Harmony Foods. Harmony Foods does us a huge favor here, and they take their fresh produce and they bring us the fresh produce as soon as they determine they're not going to sell it to their customers. And so we receive fresh produce from Harmony Foods on a regular basis. So thanks very much to Harmony Food. Big eaters. All right, we don't have any elephants here at the Headwaters Science Center. Extra large animals can go through tons of food. Literally, they're not exaggerating. African elephants can eat 660 pounds of food per day. Most of that food comes in the form of hay, but keepers also feed elephants up to 15 pounds of fruit and vegetables. They feed them melons, pineapples, pears, celery, parsley, lettuce, cabbage, kale, tomatoes, potatoes, onions, beets, sugarcane, apples, sweet potatoes, and bananas. All of those figure into the menu for an elephant. And I on purpose read all of those because we have quite a long list that eventually make it into the dishes of many of our animals.
Well, and the thing I really like about that list is it's a lot of stuff that an elephant wouldn't eat in the wild. It's a lot of stuff that you would never find in Africa where African elephants live. And so I think a really important takeaway from a book like this should be that it's more about the nutritional content than it is the actual food item.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
you know, an elephant's never going to encounter a potato in the wild, but potato's got what an elephant can use in it, then there's no harm in giving it to it.
Yeah, very good. I think I'll read another paragraph because we deal with this issue a little bit too. It's called Keeping Fit Animal Style. In zoos, big eaters might not get so much exercise as they would in the wild. And like people, zoo animals can pack on the pounds if they overeat and don't get enough exercise. And that's not good for their health either. Another issue that we encounter here, we'll have animals that are just quite simply overweight. They don't have the living in the wild that they need to deal with. Treat days. All right, I'm going to pull this one a little closer. I want you to look really carefully at what is kind of like a frozen juice shake. That's what it's looking like. But look at it really carefully.
Probably blood.
All right, well, we better find out. It's May 22nd, and it means it's party time for Anastasia and Katya, two rare Siberian tigers at the Seneca Park Zoo in Rochester, New York. To celebrate, zookeepers put up decorations and they sing happy birthday. And of course, there are delicious treats for all the animals and their human guests too. Animals don't celebrate birthdays in the wild, but hosting a celebration with special events and foods adds excitement to what can be a routine life for zoo animals. Celebrations also bring visitors to the zoo and attention to the issues that zoos want to highlight, like conservation. Of course, celebrating a birthday is an extra big deal if, like Anastasia and Katya, the guest of honor belongs to an endangered species. So what's in the frozen shake? That would be 8.5 cups of animal blood. So Ryan knew what he was talking about. Cow, sheep, pig, or goat. Then a round plastic container. 1 piece of horse tail or ox tail, bone in, and then a whole bunch of catnip. And that's what's in there.
Yeah. We would do a very similar thing for the otter's birthday party every year at the Great Lakes Aquarium. They would get a blood and fish block of ice basically to chase around in their pen over the course of the day.
Orion, you probably didn't see it. Orion just objected. He said, "Could we get on with it?" Enough of this talking about.
There's no rabbit in there.
Yeah, there's no rabbit. For the birds. Birds come in all shapes and sizes. They eat a wide variety of foods too. That presents a special set of challenges to zookeepers. At the Naval Aviary in Washington, D.C., birds are fed at different heights of the enclosure. Some find their meals way up in the tree canopy, while others find theirs down next to the roots in the shrubs below. So they're having to figure out how to give special treatment to all those birds. And we deal with that issue here, as we have a variety of birds.
Well, and the other thing you're talking about there that we do encounter is the challenge of when you have a bunch of different species in an enclosure, how do you get food to ones that are in more challenging to reach areas? So like the area where we would see this is in fish tanks, where we have like our, when it comes up the most, like in my personal experience feeding, is in the salt tank, where if we just sprinkle food on the top and the fish that are free swimming and hang out at the top eat it all. But there's a bunch of stuff that lives in the bottom of the tank too, so you have to special deliver it down there to them. Either with a pair of tongs or just like clever distraction where you sprinkle all the food on the top on one side and you put all your sinking food on the other side so it gets down to the bottom for them.
Right on. Problems in captivity. While zookeepers do their best to feed and care for their charges, they can't fully recreate natural conditions. Kept in enclosures, foragers can't travel to find food that ripens at different seasons. Carnivores can't hunt a range of prey that they do like they do on the plains or in the rainforest. As a result, even the best zoo diets can be more limited than an animal's wild diets. In some cases, zookeepers don't fully know what their charges eat in the wild. Some, like the clouded leopard, are so secretive and not easy to observe in their natural habitat. It goes on to talk about the difficulty of knowing exactly what to feed an animal. Be a beastie to the beasties. Feeding animals healthy zoo food is only one part of a zookeeper's job. There are many different ways to take care of animals both inside and outside the zoo. Get started now with these animal-friendly tips, and I'm just going to read the tips. Find out more, so read books. Go to the library, find out books. Adopt an animal. Be a volunteer, which, by the way, you can do that here at the Headwaters Science Center. You can be a volunteer. Get outside. Create safe local habitats. Spread the word, and take care of the planet. Did you know our species, Homo sapiens, is found on a branch of the animal family tree called primates? Our closest relatives are the great apes and include chimpanzees and bonobos. Bonobos. Bonobos.
Yeah.
I don't know what bonobos are.
They basically look like chimps.
All right. We are also related to gorillas, orangutans, gibbons, and even lemurs. Almost all nonfiction books care so much about what they presented to you in the story, they're going to come with a glossary. This would be a good place to go and look up some of those terms. Bonobos, which by the way isn't on this page, so that won't help me out. Then there were some parts in the story that they want you to answer to the puzzles, but the index is the really helpful one. You can go back to a part in the story and see what you missed. Anyway, thanks for listening today. This has been the Headwaters Science Center.